Caitlin Clark just got violently taken down on national television in front of millions of screaming fans, and instead of the entire league rushing to defend their absolute biggest star, a chilling, deafening silence fell over the organization. Everyone on the internet, from casual fans to seasoned sports analysts, is screaming that Caitlin Clark is just a product of media hype, a fabricated star created by television executives to sell expensive tickets and generate viral clips. But the people calling her those names, the people slapping negative labels on her every single move, are completely missing the point of what is actually happening right in front of our eyes. The truth that they absolutely do not want you to see is hidden in the dark shadows of the locker room and buried deep within the raw, unedited statistics. If you stay with me until the very end of this extensive video, you are going to find out exactly why the media narrative around Caitlin Clark is built on a massive, highly calculated half-truth. You will discover the one specific, undeniable statistic that completely destroys the loud arguments of her biggest haters. And you will finally understand the real reason why what is happening to Caitlin Clark right now matters for the entire future of women. U.S. sports, the economy of the league, and the cultural shift in professional athletics. This is a story that is so much bigger than just a simple game of basketball. It is a story about jealousy, structural failure, silent retaliation, and the ultimate price of greatness. Just a quick note before we dive deep into this madness: everything you are about to hear is based entirely on publicly available information, verified reports from league insiders, and our own extensive frame-by-frame film and data analysis. We are not affiliated with Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, or the Women U.S. National Basketball Association in any capacity. We are not here to pick a side in this bitter, ongoing war of words. We are simply here to break down what the numbers and the raw footage actually tell us about this incredible situation. All opinions expressed here are for entertainment and informational purposes only, and we respect all the athletes involved in this highly sensitive, extremely polarizing conversation. Now let us rewind the tape and look at exactly what does it look like when a professional basketball career completely falls apart in slow motion. Oh, because Chennedy Carter just gave the entire sports world an absolute masterclass in how to systematically destroy your own legacy. Let us paint the picture of that specific day. The arena was packed to the absolute rafters. The energy in the building was electric, the kind of atmosphere that only a generational talent can bring to a regular season game. Caitlin Clark was running a standard offensive route. She was nowhere near the basketball. She was simply trying to navigate through the defense setting her feet, preparing to execute the play that her coach had drawn up on the sideline. She had her eyes locked on the ball handler, completely unaware of the danger that was rapidly approaching from her blind side. And then, completely out of nowhere, Chennedy Carter approached her. Carter did not make a play for the basketball. She did not attempt to establish a legal defensive position. Instead, she deliberately lowered her shoulder, accelerated her momentum, and delivered a vicious, unprovoked hip check directly into the side of Caitlin Clark. The impact was violent. You could hear the collective gasp of the entire arena. Clark was sent flying through the air, crashing violently onto the unforgiving hardwood floor. The referees immediately blew their whistles. The play was stopped dead in its tracks, and the broadcast commentators were left completely speechless. This was not a basketball play. This was a physical assault disguised as competitive fire. It was a moment that sent shockwaves through the entire sports world, dominating the news cycle for weeks on end. Everyone had an opinion. Former players weighed in, sports talk radio hosts yelled at each other until they were blue in the face, and the internet exploded into a million different fractured arguments. But the most shocking part of this entire ordeal was not the hit itself. It was the chilling aftermath. It was the complete lack of accountability, the stubborn refusal to apologize, and the bizarre media tour that followed 14 months later. 14 long months have passed since that infamous physical altercation on the court, and Chennedy Carter has finally unexpectedly broken her long and stubborn silence. But if you or anyone else were expecting a heartfelt apology, a moment of quiet reflection, or a mature acknowledgement of a past mistake, you are about to be severely, brutally disappointed. Carter recently sat down for an exclusive interview, but she did not choose a respectable sports network. She did not sit down with seasoned journalists who would ask her tough, fair questions about her conduct and her future in the league. Instead, she made the highly questionable decision to appear on a podcast hosted by Neon. For those who are not familiar, Neon is a highly controversial streamer who literally built his entire brand, his massive audience, and his bank account on internet chaos, manufactured controversy, and toxic drama. That specific, deliberate choice of platform tells you absolutely everything you need to know about her current state of mind and her public relations strategy. It tells you that this is not about taking accountability, showing personal growth, or taking the necessary steps to fix a severely broken professional reputation. This is a desperate, chaotic damage control tour from a professional player who is slowly watching her lifelong dream slip entirely out of her grasp. Sitting in that podcast studio surrounded by microphones and cameras, Carter finally dropped the absolute bombshell that everyone in the basketball community had been quietly whispering about for over a year. Without a single ounce of hesitation, she looked directly into the camera lens and confidently claimed that Angel Reese was the one who explicitly ordered the hit on Caitlin Clark. Let that massive accusation truly sink into your brain for a moment. She is publicly on the record accusing her former teammate, a current star in the Women U.S. National Basketball Association, of orchestrating a physical, premeditated assault on a fellow professional athlete. But the situation gets even more absurd and frankly insulting to the intelligence of the fans when you listen carefully to how Carter actually describes the mechanics of the foul itself. She framed the entire violent incident as a completely normal, everyday basketball reaction to a minor physical play. Carter claimed with a completely straight face that she might have been elbowed on a previous offensive possession, even though the extensive video evidence of that alleged elbow is highly questionable, if not entirely non-existent. She claimed that someone on the court yelled directly in her face, causing her emotions to suddenly spike out of control. And then she confidently says she came down the court, hit a nice little mid-range pull-up jumper, and decided to give Caitlin Clark what she actually had the absolute audacity to call a little energy tap. She sat there on a public platform and called a devastating blindside hip check that sent another human being crashing violently to the floor a simple tap. The professional league executives reviewed that specific play from multiple high-definition camera angles, immediately upgraded the severity of the call, and officially classified it as a flagrant one foul. But in Carter, U.S. twisted version of reality, it was just a little friendly reminder to let Clark know she was physically present on the floor. Carter even went as far as to have the audacity to compare her violent, unprovoked outburst to the standard physical play that occurs in the Men U.S. National Basketball Association. She specifically cited historical moments where players like Jeff Teague viciously pushed LeBron James out of bounds during a highly heated, emotionally charged playoff series. She is basically looking at the camera and arguing that this specific incident is just standard competitive basketball smack talk, and that the entire world, the media, the fans, and the league officials are simply overreacting to a completely normal basketball play. But when you closely watch the video of the interview, the most striking, unsettling thing is not just the ridiculous words she is saying, but the absolute lack of emotion in how she says it. The entire time she is speaking, recounting the events of that day, she does not sound even remotely sorry for what she did. She does not sound remorseful. She does not sound reflective about the massive damage she caused to the League U.S. public image. And she certainly does not sound like someone who regrets potentially injuring a fellow player. Instead, she sounds incredibly, deeply annoyed. She sounds annoyed that she got suspended from the team and lost a significant amount of money. She sounds annoyed that the sports media refuses to let the story die and fade into the background. And most of all, she sounds absolutely boiling mad that Caitlin Clark's career just kept skyrocketing into the stratosphere, while her own career completely stalled out, hit a massive brick wall, and fell apart. At one specific point during the lengthy podcast conversation, Carter actually stated that she does not have anything against Clark on a personal level. She explicitly stated that Clark is a great player, but she could not help herself. She quickly made sure to add that she herself is also a great player who constantly gets buckets and scores at a high level. And then, in a chilling moment of pure, unchecked ego, she smiled a very telling smile and proudly declared that she absolutely loves the hate. She claimed that she feeds off the negative energy of the crowd and that the constant criticism actually makes her play even harder on the court. That is absolutely not the sound of a professional athlete who is trying to do serious damage control and get back into the good graces of general managers and team owners. That is the distinct sound of someone who is deeply frustrated, incredibly bitter, and desperately trying to cover up her massive, glaring insecurities with fake, hollow bravado. There is not a single, solitary second in that entire hour-long interview where Carter acknowledges the basic, undeniable reality of the play. She never once admits that Caitlin Clark was just running a standard, drawn-up offensive route playing clean, fundamental basketball, and got hit completely away from the actual play of the ball. She never admits that the flagrant foul call by the professional referees was entirely justified, fair, and necessary to protect the safety of the players. Instead, she continuously paints herself as the ultimate tragic victim of a chaotic situation that she now suddenly claims Angel Reese created entirely out of thin air. This is the most explosive, dangerous, and potentially league-altering part of this entire controversy. She is directly pointing her finger at a current, highly popular Women U.S. National Basketball Association player and loudly declaring to the world that Reese specifically told her to commit a flagrant foul. Now, if you go back into the archives and closely watch the broadcast footage from that specific day, there is indeed a brief moment where Angel Reese is clearly seen jumping up and down in apparent celebration on the bench immediately after the violent incident occurred. That piece of visual evidence certainly hints at the dark possibility that Reese might have known exactly what was going to happen before Carter even made physical contact. But here is the massive gaping hole in Carter U.S. new highly explosive narrative. This entire accusation about Angel Reese was entirely absent from absolutely everything Carter said immediately after the game ended 14 months ago. Let us rewind to that post-game locker room. When the professional sports reporters crowded around her locker, shoving microphones and recording devices in her face, practically begging her to explain what had just happened on the court, she completely and utterly stonewalled them. She sat there with a deep scowl on her face, exuding negative energy, and repeatedly told the press that she was not going to answer any Caitlin Clark questions whatsoever. When the seasoned journalists pressed her further and specifically asked if Clark had said something disrespectful to provoke the violent hit, Carter coldly said she did not know what Clark said. When they asked what she herself said to Clark during the altercation, Carter said she did not say anything at all. She completely shut the entire conversation down, packed her gym bags, and walked away from the media without giving a single solitary shred of an explanation or context. There was absolutely no mention of being elbowed by anyone on the opposing team. There was absolutely no mention of Angel Reese telling her to do anything malicious. So the sudden, shocking idea that Angel Reese masterminded this entire physical assassination attempt is a brand new, highly convenient addition to the story. It is an excuse that magically appeared out of thin air only after Carter had been forced to leave the country and play professional basketball overseas for a full season with absolutely zero women U.S. National Basketball Association teams calling her phone to offer a contract. And to make matters even worse, to truly highlight the sheer hypocrisy of her actions, right after the podcast episode dropped on the internet, Carter went straight to her social media accounts to stir up even more unnecessary drama. She posted a highly cryptic, thinly veiled tweet talking about how the ability to consistently make easy layups puts basketball players in a completely different higher tier of talent. She did not explicitly attach a name to the tweet, but she absolutely did not need to. Every single basketball fan on the internet, every sports analyst, and every casual observer immediately connected that specific insult to Angel Reese and her well-documented, highly publicized historical struggles with layup efficiency and finishing around the rim. So let us get the timeline straight. Within the span of a single week, Carter publicly blamed Reese for the foul on a viral podcast and then publicly mocked her basketball skills on a global social media platform. These are absolutely not the actions of a mature, seasoned professional who has moved on from a past mistake and is genuinely ready to rejoin a cohesive team environment. This is a player who is actively and deliberately torching her relationship with a former teammate, burning every bridge she has left, all while cowardly claiming she was just following that same teammate's explicit orders. The absolute hypocrisy is staggering, and the fans are absolutely tearing her apart piece by piece in the comment sections across all platforms. People are rightfully pointing out that even if Reese asked her to do it, Carter is a grown adult, a professional athlete who made her own conscious, deliberate choice to commit the foul. As one top-rated comment perfectly and succinctly stated, everyone has the fundamental right to say no when asked to do something wrong, but Carter consciously chose to say yes. She chose the cheap shot, she chose the violence, and now she is stubbornly refusing to take the heavy accountability that comes with that terrible career-altering choice. But why is Chennedy Carter actually truly banned from the Women U.S. National Basketball Association right now? To truly understand how this situation reached an absolute boiling point, we have to look far past this one single isolated incident and thoroughly examine the absolute structural collapse of the Chicago Sky organization. Because the harsh, undeniable truth is the Chicago Sky were a complete and total, unmitigated mess long before the infamous events of June 2024. When general manager Jeff Pagliacca made the shocking, controversial decision to officially fire head coach Teresa Weatherspoon immediately after the season ended, he did not use standard safe public relations language. He did not issue a generic press release giving some vague, meaningless speech about the team deciding to go in a different strategic direction. He was unusually brutally and refreshingly direct about the incredibly toxic situation that had festered inside his own building. Multiple highly trusted league sources eventually confirmed that the coaching environment in Chicago had essentially entirely catered strictly to the personal needs and statistical desires of a few specific players. The coaching staff had completely abandoned the fundamental idea of building a cohesive, unselfish system that could actually win professional basketball games on a consistent basis. And when you look closely dissecting the game film and the box scores of how the 2024 season actually played out on the hardwood, you can see exactly what that toxic, broken culture looked like in real time. The Chicago Sky finished the grueling season with a dismal, highly embarrassing record of 13 wins and 27 losses. That terrible, unacceptable record firmly put them right near the absolute bottom of the entire professional league. But while the team was losing games at a historically embarrassing rate, getting blown out night after night, Angel Reese was somehow miraculously putting up massive, historic rebounding numbers. Her individual statistics were getting highlighted on major sports networks every single night, creating a bizarre, confusing, and deeply frustrating dynamic for anyone who actually understands winning basketball. You had a really obvious and extremely painful gap between individual statistical success and massive team failure. The team is losing by 20 points, But one player's individual stats look like she is having an absolute most valuable player caliber season. And the dark, unspoken reason for that massive discrepancy is that the coaching staff was deliberately, unapologetically running the offense in a way that artificially fed those specific numbers. Sources inside the locker room specifically describe the offensive scheme as being tailored to feed Reese for the sole, selfish purpose of stat padding. Stat padding is a direct quote from angry, frustrated people inside the league who were forced to sit there and watch this unprofessional display unfold. We are talking about the very definition of selfish losing basketball. Picture a specific game where the Chicago Sky are down by a massive margin of 22 points deep in the fourth quarter. The opposing team, the Indiana Fever, has gracefully emptied their bench and is playing all of their reserve players because the game is entirely out of reach. But instead of doing the right thing, resting their starters, and accepting the blowout loss gracefully, the Chicago head coach inexplicably keeps Angel Reese in the game. She is out there playing incredibly hard against bench players and third stringers for absolutely no other reason than to secure her precious, meaningless double-double. She is literally fighting her own teammates for rebounds under the basket just so she can break a rookie record. That means absolutely nothing if the entire team is getting destroyed on the scoreboard. Dedicated basketball fans started brutally mocking her on the internet, cleverly calling her rebounds, bounds, because it was painfully obvious that she was only playing for herself and her own personal brand. And while all of this blatant stat padding was happening, Chennedy Carter was actually quietly leading the entire team in scoring. Carter was averaging an highly impressive 17.5 points per game. She was not some forgotten bench warmer with a massive chip on her shoulder who was barely getting any minutes on the floor. She was the Team US absolute most lethal scorer, putting up real, tangible offensive numbers, and she had to watch the team absolutely go nowhere because the priorities of the coaching staff were completely, fundamentally wrong. According to those same trusted league sources, players around the roster were genuinely deeply unhappy with the terrible dynamic that Coach Weatherspoon allowed to exist and fester like a virus. This toxic environment was unsustainable, and it ultimately led to the complete collapse of the organization. The players deserved better leadership, and the loyal fans deserved a team that actually wanted to win basketball games. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please subscribe to the channel for more content.